there's a microphone right there to catch the last gurgles, and Technicolor to photograph the red swollen tongue.
Hey, Vern.
Future events such as these
Angling?
will affect you in the future.
Damn you, Rabbit! You smell like fucking piss!
You're watching The Projectors.
Hell yeah!
A film fan program discussing a variety of movies from history and around the world.
What do you think of this boner I got?
Featuring your hosts, Bob Sham.
When you're Scandinavian, flopping out your mommy milkers is nothing.
And Angela.
If they were just gun perverts, this would be fine.
Party!
Thank you for selecting The Projectors.
I want French pancakes like at IHOP.
And now a preview of our film discussion.
He drove like a demon. He flew like a hawk. When it came to the water, he was a master too. He was, in fact, the ultimate playboy. And then, one day...
Harold, I should like to ask you something.
Certainly, sir.
You've been with me for many years now, Harold. What would you do if I told you I had lost all my money?
I should leave immediately, sir, upon giving the proper notice.
Suicide?
No, sir, I was not going to suggest suicide, sir. I was going to suggest marriage.
Marriage? You mean to a woman?
Yes, sir, that is what I had in mind.
You have no mother, no father, no children, no one at all?
No one at all. Oh, Henry, I am alive. I want to give love. Darling.
No, don't let them out. And the girl?
She's enormously wealthy, too.
Forgive me, Henrietta, what I'm trying to say is... Will you marry me?
Beg your pardon?
Oh, Henrietta. Ah! Damn it to hell.
Did you hurt yourself?
No, kneeling on broken glass is my favorite pastime. It keeps me from slouching.
I don't see why you take it for granted that the only reason that somebody would marry me is for my money. There may be some other basis, you know.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God, of course, Henrietta. Don't you think that I know? Haven't I proposed to you these past 10 years on whatever other basis there is?
Dearly beloved, we are gathered together here in the sight of God and in the face of this company to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony.
Never have I seen one woman in whom every social grace was so lacking. That woman is a menace not only to health, but to Western civilization as we know it. She doesn't deserve to live. Forget I said that.
Oh, Henry! Listen! Henry, it sounds like a waterfall! Henry! I can't swim! Henry!
Walter Matthau and Elaine May.
All right, Henrietta, I'm ready for you now. Take a deep breath, hold your nose, and let go.
You'll die laughing at the two of them in A New Leaf from Paramount Pictures.
How's it going? How's the 2025 going so far? How's it going?
Good.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I was talking to the audience.
That's what I thought. I started to answer.
Your 2025, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? They will not answer me. This month, our theme is 5 directors. So that means each week is pretty much its own subcategory with a specific director. And we've already got David Lynch's first 3 films in the can. So for our second week here in January, we are discussing somebody we breached.
No. Broached is right if you want to
Broached?
say that. You say like broached a topic. You could say we met her.
We met her tangentially.
We learned about her.
We've never met her. She's like 90 years old now.
I know. We learned about her when we were doing the movie
Ishtar.
Because
for that topic of awkward laughter, the flop last April, we were examining movies that didn't hit quite as big, that were comedies. We're like, why?
Yeah.
Well, upon the discovery of watching Ishtar, we realized that this movie that had a really weird reputation, and we learned why it has that reputation.
Yes. But it was good.
The Hollywood dirt sheets drug it. And there was a lot of, the production of it all did drag like considerably. So it became known for how much money was spent on it.
And there were some moments that were not the best, more in hindsight than at the time. But it's a good movie.
There's an awkwardness to the movie, but it's also a funny movie. And it's also incredibly well shot. So we're like, this person, Elaine May.
What's her deal?
What's her deal? And we learned a lot about her. She came up in the comedy scene with Mike Nichols back in that Manhattan yuppie comedy scene from like the 50s. That's where Woody Allen, people like that came from. So she's actually she's written things with him and has popped up in his movies over the years here and there. However way you feel about that. I know my wife here has a certain way. For anyone watching, how do you like our new layout?
Yeah, isn't this cool?
Yeah, we're a little more centered, but
We've got
not like
poster.
overlapping.
Got a poster right here.
Yeah, we got the movie poster in the middle. I kind of like that. I think it's at least better than what we had before.
Definitely.
We're all about experimenting in 2025 for layouts and styles and stuff.
Sexually. With foods.
I still can't get that apricot out of my ass. But yeah, so Elaine May, a seasoned comic, a comedy writer, written, produced lots of things over the years, but she also has a total of 4 movies under her belt, one of them being Ishtar. And after Ishtar, she just kind of walked from the director's chair.
She didn't want to deal with the bullshit.
She's somewhat reclusive. I wouldn't say she's like a hardcore J.D. Salinger, Bill Watterson type, because she has come when certain film institutions have wanted to, retroactively honor her.
Sure.
She has come to make appearances and stuff like that. But she famously doesn't want to talk about Ishtar a lot of the time when she does get interviewed.
Yeah, and she's not going to say yes to interviews from just rando people who just want to talk to her.
And also, she's fucking 90 years old.
I know,
that
give her
could
a rest.
also be a contributing factor to why she's not going to get on a plane and go do people's podcasts.
But, she hasn't always been 90, and she's been like this for a while, so you can't, that's like today.
Since like 87, whenever Ishtar came out.
Yeah, so like she's got a solid like 30-ish years of not wanting to talk to people.
So before Ishtar, she had 3 movies, and this week we're dedicated to watching the rest of Elaine May's movies. We watched a brief little documentary on her and Mike Nichols' history.
It was cute.
Mike Nichols goes on to become a director himself, a pretty prolific one.
Yeah.
I got confused that it wasn't Mike Nichols in this movie that we're discussing today. It was actually William Redfield, who plays like the banker.
He did look like him.
But didn't he kind of look like him?
I believed you without any question because he looked like him.
He looked like Mike Nichols if you imagine him in the 50s. You know how kids imagine Mike Nichols in the 50s. How you usually do. Kind of has that expression. It seemed like that the banker guy had that, so I mistakenly thought that was Mike Nichols. It's not. But we're talking about Elaine May's debut feature film comedy, A New Leaf from 1971. Written by her and based on a story by Jack Ritchie. And it stars Walter Matthau, Elaine May herself, George Rose, Jack Weston, James Coco. Cinematography by Gain Rescher. This movie cost $4 million. It made $5 million.
Well, good.
Well, I mean, any studio is going to expect you to at least... Studios want you to double,
of course,
at minimum,
of course, but
their expenditure. And so it wasn't a hit. It wasn't considered a hit.
Was she a star at the time? Did people know who she was from other things?
You know, that's a good question that because of our age and where we're at now, I don't know if I'll have a lot of context of that. But when her and Nichols were coming up, they were very well regarded. Think of it like they were the comedy equivalent of a hip indie album that maybe NPR might have a showcase on kind of thing.
Yeah, they're like the grandparents of like modern improv comedy, pretty much.
They were admired, respected, award-winning, but I don't know if like the country as a whole was like necessarily like gave too much of a shit.
They'd go on like shows, like late night talk shows together, and if you did know who she was, you probably knew them as a duo, and he's not in this movie.
I kind of also get a little sense of, and I think I caught it from this movie particular, where Elaine May and Mike Nichols, they were known for their very intelligent comedy, making like political jibes and making statements that seem pretty ahead of their time within the layers of humor that they would play up together. But in this movie, I kind of had a sense of a bit of a cultural isolation that comes from where she comes from, where they come from. Very New York people, very Manhattan people, upper echelon, upper crust kind of thing. And I think, you see Nichols and May poking at that as they would poke at everything. But I did get this sense of like, in terms of what they're going to execute, the stories they're going to tell, that there does feel like this movie is about Walter Matthau playing a middle-aged trust fund kid who has finally run out of money, who was extremely wealthy.
So privileged.
And then is gone. But the Elaine May character, or her character in this movie, seems to be a much more, almost like your everyday if your everyday suburban gardening mom got super wealthy rich. But it all is centered around wealth, and there is also a skewering of that class as well in this movie.
Because the whole thing is fitting in and being part of the group, and she is definitely not.
Her character has Asperger's, right? It doesn't say it specifically in this movie, but her character seems to have. See, this is a theme of the show. If anyone's new to the show, I have to accuse people of
being on the spectrum.
Being on the spectrum, being neurospicy in some way. That's kind of a new slang that I've picked up.
Yeah.
And but she's only the Elaine May's character in here is probably maybe a 1 chili pepper score neurospicy.
Yeah.
She actually she's presented as
bumbling.
She is bumbling. I guess I kind of got lost what I was trying to say, where this movie feels isolated in a manner in which is probably not too far off from the kind of upbringing that Elaine May would have, or the kind of upbringing you would have if you can come up amongst white jazz nerds in Manhattan and do your smart comedy.
And there is the aspect of write what you know, absolutely, which is why they're so good at making fun of these kind of people and picking at these kind of situations. But yeah, it is, for some people, maybe a little hard to really connect to.
Yeah. I can see that. And that might contribute to why this movie wasn't such a huge hit. But the movie is quite funny. The comedy in this movie is very layered, and you can miss a lot. I might want to rewatch this movie at some point just to get the little things. And the conversational humor is very funny, and that does feel kind of classic. I don't feel like you get that kind of conversational type humor as much as you get. I just don't see it that much.
Yeah.
There's a Bob Newhart, when Bob Newhart would pretend to be on the phone and shit. There is something that is kind of faded on that, but looking back, it's still kind of funny.
Definitely.
Bob Newhart passed away not that long ago.
Sad.
But Matthau, his character, Henry Graham, the descriptions of this movie describe him as a playboy, and maybe he is.
No. Playboy in the sense that he has a bunch of money and he's a bachelor.
And that
because they did used to call single men of a certain caliber playboys if they weren't married.
He is absolutely reading gay.
1000%. Most men in this movie do.
Yeah, especially his uncle, who I'm pretty sure is blatantly gay.
And also his gentleman's gentleman.
Played by James Coco, the gentleman's gentleman, as played by George Rose.
Yeah, so at the beginning, he's doing all these things, and everywhere he goes, his bank is trying to get a hold of him, and they can't. And he's avoiding every phone call. And finally, he goes in to see the banker.
Because his check bounced, and he's like, I demand to know why this check, the guy
The
that looks like Mike Nichols, that isn't.
Yeah, the $6,000 check needs to be paid.
The check is for $6,000, and you don't have $6,000. In other words, you don't have $60.
Come to the point, Beckett.
The point, Mr. Graham, is that you don't have any money. The capital and the income are exhausted, and you no longer have any money. I wish there was some other way I could say it. How could I put it? That money, you have no capital, you have no income, no, it's only money. No, you have no money. There's no other way to put it, you see.
You mean I have no money?
Yes, that's what I mean.
I've been managing your account since you turned 18 and got this trust fund. I knew you when you were living with your uncle for 10 years. He's not going to give you any money because you were a terror. I have been putting in my own money to cover your ass for a while now, and you have no money. The scene where he's trying to describe to Henry the fact that he has no money, he has to say it in so very many ways. He says, you have no capital. You have no income. Finally, he says, you have no money. And he's still going, okay, but can you pay this $6,000 check? He got all this money because his father passed away and he lived with his uncle. And so he turned 18. And the banker mentions at one point that he could have lived for a very long time on about $90,000 a year, but he chose to live on $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
So now he's middle-aged and run out of money, has never had a job, never wants to have a job. And this, I love the
I can
part where
relate.
he goes, well,
Not the money part. Well,
no, but like if you had to, you would. Like, listen, I love the part where he really grasps it. And he starts going around and saying goodbye to all the things he loves to do.
That is so funny. He's going to like the polo club and he's having this
He's like touching all the
like
rackets and stuff.
He's breaking up with his upper classness.
He goes to this restaurant and the maitre d' walks up and says, oh, it's so good to see you, sir. Like, we can have a table for you in just a moment. And he says, no, I just wanted to take in the room one more time. And the guy says, well, you're always welcome here, sir. And he goes, that's what I wanted. I wanted to know that I was still welcome.
And just keep in your mind that this is Walter Matthau, a middle-aged man at this point, and and he does such a great job at doing the comedic selling of like a spoiled 50-year-old little boy.
It's so believable. It's ridiculous. I wonder how old he actually was at this time, because he does seem like he's 45, 50.
Middle age is my guess.
Yeah. And basically what happens is he goes home and he's, touching his artwork, and his gentleman's gentleman comes in. So he's been living in this very expensive apartment. He has all this art. He has everything. He has
They're
this
called
man.
penthouses when they're expensive.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've never had one. And so his gentleman's gentleman comes in and...
Harold, I should like to ask you something.
Certainly, sir.
You've been with me for many years now, Harold. What would you do if I told you I had lost all my money?
I should leave immediately, sir, upon giving the proper notice.
Thank you, Harold. I knew I could count on a straight answer from you.
Do something. Go ask your uncle. And he's like, I can't ask my uncle. And he goes, well, the only other thing of a man of your stature, if you don't want to work, is to marry someone with money.
Yeah.
And then the weird thing is he goes to his uncle.
His uncle is this very effeminate man who is sitting amongst this feast. He's got
so
this
much food.
All this food like laid out
and
in front of him.
He's a bigger dude, and he's wearing like a dressing gown, I think. And it's a wonderful picture.
An arrangement. The uncle doesn't seem to have a lot of faith in him. Like, Henry is broke, but he still has things that he can liquidate that are of value, but he doesn't want to go that far just yet. If he can just borrow $50,000 from his uncle. And the uncle is sitting there with this feast, and at one point he takes a knife and he carves a banana. Like he cuts a banana and he forks it, and he and he unpeels it by cutting into it. It's just this like weird little physical bit of humor that you could miss if you're just like looking at your phone or you turn away. And this movie is full of these little things like that, and how everything is set up. The cinematography here feels very experimental in a lot of ways. I can't remember. I think it's when we first meet the butler that it opens up with him talking in his mouth or something. I think it's the butler, and Henry is like further down the shot, but you're seeing Henry through like the open mouth here. And like there's like all these little things that are very experimental, that feel very experimental, that I really appreciate.
They also do try to make you think you're looking at one thing and you're really looking at another. That visual aspect of humor. The open of this movie is he's standing in front of this like curtain, and it appears that surgery is happening or that someone is injured. And it really makes you think that his love is in danger and they're at the hospital.
But it turns out it's a sports car that the mechanic has been working on, and this car barely functions.
It's so impractical that it breaks down every single time he drives it, but he also drives it like it's a race car.
Yeah.
Every single time he drives it.
He wears a helmet when he drives.
Yeah.
So, but he makes a deal with his uncle, and his uncle says, he's like, if I can get married, I want to borrow $50,000, and I'm looking to find a woman to marry. And the uncle makes this deal. He's like, fine, I'll give you $50,000. But if you don't pay it back in 6 weeks, then you owe me 10 times that amount. Which would essentially mean he owns everything he has down to his shoelaces.
Yeah.
And he would have absolutely nothing. Any aspect of his family, from his side of the family, any estates, any details, all goes to the uncle, and he would be even more poor than he is right now.
He would only have the clothes on his back.
And so
the weird thing is, Henry's the one that says 6 weeks. He's also so confident that he can find someone to marry him that he's the one that says 6 weeks. Give yourself more time, dude.
So then we gotta get a bit of a somewhat of a montage of Henry trying to date around, and this is the part where he's like, oh, this is a gay man, right? He's going around. There's this older woman who's very lusty, and looks like she's going to take her top off, and he just screams and stuff.
He's like broken out in hives. He breaks out in hives a lot when he's with these women.
Yeah, because he's a gay man. Maybe he's asexual, but he definitely kind of reads like this very spoiled upper crust gay man.
In the day, he would have been just an eccentric playboy, which is, they do call him a playboy.
So he finally ends up at this tea room place with all these people.
Everybody, this is Henry Graham. This is Harriet Storch. Bo, of course, you know.
Hello, Henry.
Mr. and Mrs. Sims, Tooth and Roggy. They're here from Geneva on home leave. This is Lucy Sylvester. And our neighbors, Dr. and Mrs. Darrell Hitler, John Sylvester, and Freddie, of course, you know.
And he sees this woman sitting in the corner. We discover her name is Henrietta Lowell. His name is Henry.
Henrietta.
And her name is Henrietta. And he notices how completely awkward she is, and he calls that she's going to be spilling her cup before it actually happens. And sure enough, she does. She gets some information by someone else there that she is an heiress.
Well, she's old Guy Lowell's daughter.
Well, who's old Guy Lowell?
Boss, he's dead now. Been dead ever since I can remember.
Well, who was he when he was alive?
Well, he was an industrialist. Or a composer, something like that.
Well, did he die with his wealth intact, or did he lose everything in suicide? I'm merely curious.
50 acres.
She has no parents in her life to tell her what to do with their money. She has all this stuff, and she is also a botanist. But she seems to be very naive and kind of clueless. So he's like, well, that's my cue. And while the lady who's running the joint is blessing her out for spilling the tea, because that's how rich she is, that she can be shitty to another rich person. And then that's when Henry steps up to be the knight in shining armor, and he takes his tea, dumps it on the floor.
You son of a bitch.
You dare call me a son of a bitch? Madam, I have seen many examples of perversion in my time, but your erotic obsession with your carpet is probably the most grotesque and certainly the most boring I have ever encountered. You're more to be scorned than pitied. Good day, Mrs. Cunliffe.
Then he walks off with Henrietta. He takes her into his car. She went there by bus, apparently, which seemed very strange, but it represents more of that bizarre naivety that seems to him to make her an easy target.
Yeah, and they're going to her house, and again, she has 50 acres, so they're down this road, which I presume is her driveway, and his car breaks down. They end up sitting in the car and talking all night. So she does fall for him. Immediately, he's like, we gotta go to dinner. Let me take you out.
Good morning, Mr. Graham. You have exactly 7 days and 9 hours to destitution. Shall I serve your breakfast in bed, or would you like me to follow you about with the tray?
No, thank you, Harold. I haven't got time to eat. See if you can find a college outline of botany. Reserve a table for 2 at Pavillon for tonight. Get the florist on the phone and start making out a guest list. I think I have found, God help us, Miss Wright.
Meanwhile, he is cringing inside. So he's a man who thinks he's better than this woman, pretending to be a man who is in love with this woman, and he's so believable in both aspects. When he's with her and he's taking care of her and defending her, it's lovely. You understand why she's in love with him. 1,000%.
And when he goes back to his man, his butler, he says like the most awful shit about her.
She is not suitable. She's primitive. She has no spirit, no wit, no conversation, and she has to be vacuumed every time she eats.
Oh, she must be very wealthy, sir.
Yes, she is.
The idea is that this Henrietta, as played by Elaine May herself, is this bumbling, unattractive woman. And what makes her unattractive to him?
She is not suitable. She's primitive. She has no spirit, no wit, no conversation, and she has to be vacuumed every time she eats.
She's clumsy.
Yeah.
I can relate to that, being married to a clumsy person. She's a little goofy. She's kind of... I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking like, please don't be threatened by this statement, dear. This is a fictional character after all.
Sure.
This might be the perfect woman. Hear me out. She's unbelievably rich, but has none of the trappings and stereotypical behaviors of a wealthy woman and what that would entail, the annoying parts of being that. He really hates how she goes on about her profession. She loves plants.
She's also a professor at the university just because she wants to be. She doesn't have to be. She loves it.
And he's bored by her, but I always have found that if you're tapping into something that you're passionate about, then it's pretty easy for me to listen to someone talk about the things that they're passionate about. And also, she is sincere in what she does or doesn't understand. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't pretend like she's something she isn't. I don't see what the problem here. She may be she's a little clumsy. She's kind of messy when she eats. Me too.
Oh yeah, he comments that there's always crumbs on her.
Like this is the perfect woman. Like if you actually just cared, you're never going to find someone this wealthy like this. You wouldn't want to be with someone who's the actual wealthy people like this.
Oh no.
She's the most unique and perfect wealthy person on the planet.
But he thinks he wants one of those cookie cutter women who will fit in polite society and he can take to these tea parties and shit.
Well, they go to dinners and stuff, and there's a great scene where after they first eat, and it's very quick where she gets up to move the table, and her lap is just loaded with crumbs and shit, right?
She has also told him during this dinner, she's drinking red wine, and she asks him,
"May I ask you something?"
Certainly, Henrietta.
Have you ever tasted Mogan David's extra heavy Malaga wine with soda and lime juice?
Not that I can recall.
One of my students happened to introduce it to me on a field trip to the Canary Islands. It tastes a little like grape juice, and every year is good.
Why don't you just drink grape juice?
It's not as sweet. I had never drunk wine at all until I tried Mogan David's extra heavy Malaga wine with soda and lime juice. It's delicious.
We didn't mention that before he ever finds a wife, he decides that whoever he finds, he is going to murder because he wants their money.
She also wants to find a new species of fern and rename
It's her
it.
dream.
But yeah, so they successfully court, and they do get married extremely quickly.
Against the wishes of her lawyer, who turns out a terrible man. He's been proposing to her for decades.
Of course, because she's sweet and naive and just wants to do simple things, even though she has all this shit. She has people in her life that are taking advantage of her and that she's employed just out of the kindness of her heart. So, and there's a clue in that, in the fact that she took the bus. He finally goes to her estate and he finds all these people there. Well, they're meant to go wait for their driver. And so they have to take a cab or something.
Because the chauffeur is usually never to be found, which is why she was taking a bus.
And she's like, sometimes he just doesn't show up. So she goes in and she has this staff of servants or whatever that are just kind of having the run of the place.
Yeah.
And they open the kitchen door and the chauffeur that was supposed to pick her up is like hammered and making out with one of the maids or whatever. And yeah, so she's surrounded by all this so-called staff that are making all this money. And the lawyer is in on this as well.
He gets a cut.
That's why he's so desperate to keep any suitor out of her life. And maybe it wouldn't be so bad if these people actually just did the job that she kindly hired. Because it's one thing to like screw over like someone who doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
But this is like a lady that's actually just was being charitable and being like, sure, okay, no problem. And doesn't seem to care when you actually don't do anything.
Yeah, she needs very little. So her needs are met.
Yeah.
And the woman who is in charge of the household, Everybody Loves Raymond's mom.
The mom from Everybody Loves Raymond.
She takes care of all the hiring. So she's just got all her friends working there, basically, right? And there's teenagers walking around too, like the children of people who work there. And when they first come in and she's meeting Henry, she winks at him like every 30 seconds. Like, I got this idea that she was going to try to fuck him.
Yeah, like she's attempting to seduce or something.
Because if she can get him on her side, he's not going to change anything. But immediately he's like, fuck all these
Everybody
people.
is fired, essentially. Yes. Now, he starts asking, he brings his man in. There's a scene where they're out.
It's their honeymoon.
You can see the image right on top of where my image is. He's reading a book out in the open, like, about toxicology and, like, poisons, what you can use. And he doesn't see that she's dangling off the edge of a cliff trying to
have killed her at that moment.
Identify a fern. So he's so focused on studying on how to kill her that he just keeps overlooking these moments where she's almost just killing herself.
Yeah. And he decides he's found the answer because this one chemical can often be found in greenhouses, and she's a botanist, but when he gets there, she's an organic botanist. She does not want to use pesticides and things.
He's very unsubtle in asking questions about certain chemicals and where they would be.
And so he's gentleman picks up that he's going to try to do something to her and gets worried.
Things go on and he's open and he still hates her. They go somewhere and she discovers a fern.
Oh, that was when she almost fell off the mountain. So she had taken it back. She couldn't identify it. She had sent it off and just made sure that was real, that it really was new. And so when she almost died hanging off that cliff, that's when she found it.
So
on their honeymoon.
So she comes to him and then she explains to him like, yeah, that fern, that was a new species, but then tells him that she named it like something Latin grandma after his last name.
Well, are you sure that they'll know? I mean, that it's me. Will they have my name in the atlas under G for Henry Graham?
Yes, and they'll have you in all the textbooks, Henry, as a footnote.
As a footnote, and in the atlases under G.
Yes.
Well, I've achieved a small slice of immortality myself, haven't I? As a footnote and under G.
Are you pleased, Henry?
Oh, yes, it was very thoughtful of you, Henrietta. I believe I am pleased.
It's probably maybe around this point where I think the movie could have started to wind down, where maybe he kind of hears that. We need another scene where there's a little more action, I guess, where they actually go on a trip where he actually plans to kill her. Oh, but she also gives him a medallion that has a bit of the firm that's named after him on it.
They've also talked about her wanting to have this find a fern and name it is her way of wanting to live forever.
Yeah.
Be remembered. This is her immortality.
When we hear that theme coming up as from early on in the movie about the idea of immortality and having your name etched and remembered. And he actually does, a part of him, because he's narcissistic, does appreciate it when explained to him through that concept.
Well, and it's just so sweet when she says to him, I want it to be named after you. I still found it, but I want it to be named after you because you're the one that gave me the confidence to believe that I could go and do it. And that's why I did it. Like, she's so in love with him. But yeah, she asked him, do you want to go on my field trip this year? I'm going to go canoeing. And he's like,
The Adirondacks. Would we need a guide or anyone?
Not if we didn't wander from our camp. And I would feel perfectly safe with you there, Henry. I would feel safer even than with a guide. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Sounds like the answer to everything.
They do go camping and they are in a canoe. And this part of the movie I felt like was a little draggy.
Yeah.
They go into the rapids. I mean, there's like that action, like that climactic action point where they go in, they hit some rapids, which is dangerous for him, and they fall out of the canoe and she's holding onto a branch and he's like, stay there, stay right there,
to the bank.
And you let go when I tell you. And he gets to the shore and he's drying off and he's like
monologuing.
This is it, yeah. And he's like, okay, this is going to be the time. We'll get this done. And then he realizes that he lost his fern medallion, which this part is a little odd. Like, I don't think he even gets that medallion. No, he doesn't get that medallion back. It's gone.
No, it's gone, but him knowing that he cared so much about it is the moment he realizes that he cares about her.
So when she does let go, he kind of thinks she's drowned for a second, and then he sees her, and then ultimately decides to go and rescue her. And it's in that moment, from the loss of the medallion, that he decides, she'll just be my beard for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it's a sweet moment, but it's not like he kisses her. He puts his arm around her because she's cold, but it's not let me really hold you. He just has his arm around her. And
it's a bit of a My Fair Lady ending where it's just like,
there's no passion.
This is what it is. There's no passion, but this is what it will be.
But they're going to go back home. They're going to live on this big estate, and he's going to also become a professor, and they're going to go to school every day together, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah. I kind of felt like when she was explaining initially about the fern, that should have been the emotional climax where
he could have realized in that moment.
He could have like a comedic monologue from that point where he's just having to bust through his own narcissism and get through that. But we kind of had to have the river moment. The movie just had this feeling because the comedy aspects were so layered and strong leading up into that moment that the rafting scene felt a little bit like we really need to figure out how to close this out.
I don't remember what link on the internet said this, but I was looking up this movie for us to watch it. And one of the descriptions, and I couldn't help but see it. It was right there. It was one sentence, but it fucking sucked because I don't know why people explain movies like this. It truly said, a playboy loses all his money and tries to kill his wife on a canoe trip.
Wow.
So it like straight up ruined the ending of the movie, like the where we're going with it. It was so dumb. I didn't tell you that because I didn't want to tell you that. But I was like, remember when I was like, I saw a description and I'm fucking pissed.
That's the terrible description of that movie.
That's nothing about the movie, but it's also like, why say that? That's a tiny part at the end. I don't know.
I mean, if someone wrote a description about an Elaine May movie from 1971, it was definitely like someone 60 plus years old wrote that.
And that's just the only part they remember.
Did you know that we're the youngest person to watch and discuss this movie? I mean, it's kind of...
I wouldn't honestly be that surprised.
It's kind of deep cut, you know? It's kind of deep cut, but...
Walter Matthau is really great in this movie, and Elaine May is fucking delightful.
Yeah.
She is... We've said this about other people in other movies. She's the bright spot.
Mm.
she's the part that makes you love this movie. You fall in love with her too, I think.
I do appreciate it. I've already explained why.
Yeah.
I think this character is more such a huge catch, but I do think Walter Matthau's comedy in and of itself and the way he portrays this very self-absorbed, closeted rich boy is maybe one of the funniest roles that I haven't seen everything he's done, but one of the funniest roles I've ever seen him play. I think he kind of does kill it really well in this movie. I think she is really good in this. And I mean, she gets more credit than just acting in it, of course. Yeah. She wrote it and directed it, but I think she wrote Walter Matthau's character extremely well. Yes. And I think he is just a very funny character. He's the type of character that kind of deserves to be more in some cultural zeitgeist, like, we got a Henry Graham type over here. Yeah. Like the closet case spoiled rich boy, who's completely self-serving. Who are the Henry Grahams that you have met?
We're going to make
your
this
life?
Happen.
Yeah, we'll just go to Williamson County next, right under Davidson County in Nashville where we live. And that's where we would find our Henry Grahams, But yes, A New Leaf from 1971 by Elaine May. It's a very funny movie. Even if I felt like it was stretched a little thin in the closing, I still think this movie is a very worthy 3.75.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
So it's a 7.5.
Yep.
All right, check it out. It's topping up all of the B's, a B+. Elaine May's A New Leaf from 1971. Shares that ranking with Avatar, The Way of Water, Bad Santa, Collateral, William Friedkin's Cruising, Ernest Saves Christmas. We're not changing that score.
Never.
Eyes Wide Shut is a B+. That should be maybe 1 point higher.
Yeah, I agree.
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. It's at least as good as those movies, if not better. And I am looking forward to our next Elaine May feature, which will come out this Wednesday. It's got Charles Grodin and Sybil Shepherd, her follow-up role to The Last Picture Show in The Heartbreak Kid, which was actually remade by Ben Stiller some years ago. And that's what you often pull up if you look for this movie. That movie's probably even a little bit deeper cut than maybe A New Leaf.
Yeah, I didn't even know he did it.
But I'm looking forward to it. And then on Friday, we got Elaine May directed a Cassavetes Peter Falk movie that we will discuss. Mikey
Very
and Nikki.
excited about
yes,
that.
I'm looking for that one. That one doesn't seem to be like too much of a comedy though, so we'll see what happens. I mean, if that era of Cassavetes is in it with Peter Falk, I'm thinking of some pretty rich and tense acting, but they're also gangsters apparently.
And there could be a ton of dark humor. I'm sure she could write that.
So, yeah, that's it for that.
Bye.
Thank you for watching The Projectors. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. We are available on YouTube and podcast. You can also support the show by liking, leaving comments, reviewing, sharing, and never questioning Bob when he claims that certain characters in movies are like autism. We love you. Goodbye.
Speaks about travel, yeah, we think about the land. We smart like all people's feeling real tan. I could take you places, but you need a new man. Wipe the pollen from the faces, make revision to a dream while you wait in the van.
Who are you, really? Come on now, let's have it. And I want real names or else you'll regret it.
I'm Dodi Heinrich, Professor Heinrich's daughter.
Professor Heinrich! Harold, she's invited some Nazi to the wedding.
Sir, you are hysterical. You must get hold. You are due at the altar now.
I won't move until she leaves. I will not get dressed in front of a woman, and she might as well understand that now.
You already are dressed.
Oh. Get her out. Out!
It took a life